My first moments in the Wyvern world of Wyvia involved learning its simple real-time combat, killing some low-level monsters, then earning a chest for my efforts. Lucky me. None of that is all that surprising after loading up an RPG, but the contents of the chest were. Inside wasn't a low-level consumable like I was expecting, but instead a permanent stat increase. It was a pleasant surprise and a bold statement of intent. Wyvia wears the trappings of a retro JRPG, but its beating heart is something a bit closer to a progression-focused action RPG, albeit without the randomized loot incentives that label usually carries. The resulting blend is a consistently beautiful and enjoyable 8 hours of monster slaying and character leveling. Some balancing issues and lack of replayability prevent Wyvia from reaching the soaring heights of its winged subject matter, but that doesn't stop its breezy progression from being enjoyable till the end. Wyvia makes a hell of a first impression. Its simple NES-styled pixel art actually exists in a 3D space, as evidenced by both the tilted camera and by the way light and shadow are cast. It's a unique and striking mix of old and new. Not too dissimilar from other retro throwbacks like the PS3's 3D dot game Heroes. Similarly, its combat has a retro arcadey feel too. You start with a basic swing and eventually unlock some abilities to mix in between, but it always stays comfortably in the realm of dodging projectiles in between landing hits. But Wyvia is only conditionally retro, and in many ways this is defined by its omissions as much as its inclusions. It has less of a story than it does just a premise. The Wyverns are all dead, so saith the opening text crawl. Of course they aren't, the Steam store page even advertises that you become one during your quest, and that's really all you need to care about. There's a big bad out there somewhere, there's dungeons to explore, and goons of all sizes to kill. Your character is a mercenary, so don't feel too bad if you're just here for the numbers going up. He is too. There's no quests or quest givers, with their usual task then reward incentives being replaced by a global achievement-like system, one that proactively showers you in completion prompts when you reach certain kill thresholds, collect certain quantities of items, clear out particular enemy strongholds, or just about do anything honestly. No need to wait for someone to tell you that they need 50 slimes dead. Just start swinging and you can cash that bounty in at any of the town guilds next time you visit. It gives Wyvia this air of permanent escalation and constant reward. I wasn't at all surprised when I opened the options menu and found settings for auto-swinging and auto-aiming toggles, inspirations it's no doubt pulling from its roguelite bullet hell cousins, and options it's comfortable letting you pick because everything comes secondary to continuous advancement. That tangible progression focus can even be felt from small touches like foliage density. Every time you're attacking an enemy, you're no doubt incidentally mowing the overworld's lawn too, whose grass rewards you tangibly and otherwise. You get to hear the satisfying swoosh of the cut, and oftentimes get some extra pocket change for your labor. All of these incremental boons feed into the game's many progression systems, with leveling being the most significant. Another borrow from JRPGs is Wyvia's concept of class. Your singular character can adopt any role, and in fact probably should be adopting all of them thanks to a core mechanic, cross-class abilities. The ultimate reward for maxing out certain powers on certain classes is that you get to take that power with you when you switch over to a new one. Every time your class levels up, you'll choose to acquire or enhance a power. You'll start with a simple all-rounder and can pick up universal staples like a dash and an empowered swing, but eventually you'll unlock classes that give you access to more unique moves, like the Barbarian's Area Yell, or the Knight's Divine Intervention that saves him from certain death. The cross-class leveling is an enjoyable system that rewards you for taking in the breadth of Wyvia's classes and not getting too complacent with your favorite build. It contrasts heavily against Wyvia's much more standard character leveling system, which has you plugging points into basic strength, dexterity, and intelligence statistics. It's an ask that feels tone-deaf compared to the class system that wants you to constantly mix things up. For a title that's otherwise so willing to depart from tradition to best suit its own style, it feels like these stats could have gone the way of the quest givers. Putting all those points into strength while you're a warrior is gonna feel bad when you switch over to the mage. The optimal play is to take time out of your day and money out of your coin purse to respec every class change instead. A small annoyance, but one exacerbated by how central leveling is to Wyvia, and how frequently it'll pop up for your attention and demand decisions that lack punch. I ended up just comfortably making my guy more of an all-stats generalist so I didn't have to worry about it and respec all the time. But maybe most alarmingly is how I was never punished for that. Wyvia's difficulty tuning is very easy. Your largest progress inhibitors will be getting lost in the open world, rather than getting destroyed by the enemies within it. A breezy, challenge-free playthrough is in line with many of the game's progression themes, but I was disappointed that not even the final boss, nor any of the secret post-game bosses, demand that I mix up my play or go splash in moves from any different class. I'm not one to demand infinity out of every game I play, but Wyvia's numbers over everything focus is begging for a new game plus that the game just does not have. In some ways, that's kind of the point. You will conquer this land by the time the credits roll, and that fantasy of a magically powerful super protagonist is infectious in its own way, but it's hard not to feel like the game's robust systems are waiting for a challenge demanding enough to explore them. The world itself is definitely worth exploring though. New towns are typically just a palette swap of the prior ones, but the dungeons aren't. They vary in structure between combat and puzzle-focused dungeons, to some that even demand a cross-dungeon situational awareness, where certain exits intersect with other dungeons or pop you out into different parts of the overworld map. The rewards inside of those dungeons are typically the two other legs on the progression stool: Wyvern power-ups and equipment. The Wyvern is both a mid-combat cooldown and an overworld exploration aid. Its class agnosticism make it the perfect vehicle to give you all of your Metroidvania-like power-ups, like the ability to swim and crush obstructing rocks. Unlike the class and character levels, the Wyvern grows by finding scales which are distributed semi-randomly throughout the world. Equipment is handled differently than you might expect, focusing on a horizontal expansion of options instead of a vertical increase in power. Accessories are found all throughout the map that are immediately impactful but not always ubiquitous. They solve particular problems, like environmental hazard damage reduction or protection against certain elemental types. There's seldom evergreen power increases you can just put on and forget about, which keeps the exploration consistently interesting and also ensures that the beginner zones are worth revisiting even dozens of levels past their prime. The non-accessory equipment like weapons and armor are all given to you at Wyvia's onset. Your sword, shield, staff, and other standard archetypal fantasy items can be found in their base wooden forms at the first blacksmith you come across. The random excitement of ARPG-colored loot is replaced with a predictable path of numerical increase once you've funneled enough gold into them. But it intelligently keeps the sensation of unlocking a new weapon thanks to the fact that particular thresholds on the upgrade path correspond to a big boost in power and a new aesthetic for the item in question. All of those progression mechanisms coalesce into a meaningful power-up tapestry, and in many ways, they are the game itself. Wyvia knows what it is. There are plenty of other RPGs out there where you can argue that the NPCs and locations are just vehicles for the stat-related functions they provide, but Wyvia owns it and embraces it, and folds those principles into its mission statement. It never pretends to be anything more than its combat and progression systems, and that results in a wonderfully focused and enjoyable action RPG with a comfortable retro look. Its individual moments and areas are never as engaging as the context they sit in, but that context is superbly executed and hard to put down. It's a shame that the game's robust class and item systems are never met with challenges hard enough to demand mastery over them, nor a New Game Plus to let them breathe outside the confines of a singular playthrough. But there are worse problems to have than being left wanting more after the credits roll.